Their boots rotted in mud. Their lungs burned with poison gas. And every sunrise was a reminder that they might not see another. World War I wasn't just a conflict of nations, it was a daily battle for survival. Stay with this video, in a moment, you'll see why soldiers said the trench smell could haunt a man for life. The first step into the trenches felt like crossing into another world, a narrow, filthy maze where rats thrived and death waited in silence. Days of rain turned the ground into a sucking swamp, trapping boots and swallowing entire supply crates in the mud. Rats grew fat on fallen soldiers, crawling over sleeping men at night, bold enough to steal food from their packs. In a few minutes, you'll learn why soldiers compared the trenches to a living creature trying to swallow you. Every day required constant repairs, collapsed walls, leaking roofs, and waterlogged firing steps that made fighting nearly impossible. With little space to move, soldiers lived shoulder to shoulder, their bodies pressed tightly together beneath the weight of war. Dugouts offered brief shelter, but the damp air, rotting wood, and constant shellfire made rest nearly impossible. Sleep came in short, fragile moments, stolen between bombardments, patrols, and the cold breath of night. Meals were simple and repetitive: tinned beef, hard biscuits, and lukewarm tea brewed over a smoky trench fire. A simple periscope became a lifeline, letting soldiers glimpse the enemy without exposing their heads to oncoming fire. Sandbags were stacked endlessly, trying to protect fragile walls from collapsing under rain or enemy artillery. Each dawn began the same, a tense stand-to, rifles ready, as attackers often used the rising sun as cover. Rifles were cleaned daily, not out of discipline, but necessity. Mud could jam a weapon and cost a life. Letters home were emotional lifelines, offering a moment of humanity in a place that seemed to swallow it whole. Coming up, you'll hear the one sound every new soldier prayed they'd never hear. Food deliveries were risky, but without them, soldiers survived on stale bread, moldy cans, and cold tea. Shaving was mandatory when possible, as gas masks couldn't seal properly on a bearded face. Every item, ammo, sandbags, wood planks, had to be carried by hand through twisting, narrow trench systems. Constant pumping was required to prevent water from flooding the trenches and drowning men in their sleep. Barbed wire had to be repaired at night, dangerously close to enemy lines, often under machine gun fire. Hours were spent staring across no man's land, where even the slightest movement could mean a surprise attack. Night patrols were the most feared, silent missions through darkness, mud, and the haunting unknown. Gas masks became as essential as rifles as poison gas drifted silently across battlefields without warning. Before proper masks existed, soldiers used urine-soaked rags, believing the ammonia could neutralize chlorine gas. A rolling green cloud signaled terror, choking lungs, burning eyes, and panic as masks were pulled tight. Masks had to be sealed within seconds, a single breath of toxic air could leave lasting scars or instant death. Gas victims were dragged from the line gasping for air, their lungs seared from the inside out. Training drills taught soldiers to put on masks blindfolded, a skill that often meant life or death. Horses, too, wore gas masks. They were critical for transport and no less vulnerable to deadly fumes. Gas shells left behind a silent warning. Even unexploded rounds could leak deadly chemicals. Medics could offer little more than oxygen and hope, as chemical burns ravaged lungs beyond repair. Despite the choking air, offensives continued, men pushed forward through clouds of poison. Every minute mattered. Stretcher-bearers risked their lives to drag the wounded from the killing fields. Field hospitals overflowed, their floors covered in mud, blood, and the exhausted bodies of wounded men. Nurses worked around the clock, fighting to save lives with limited tools and endless determination. Surgery was fast and brutal, anesthesia was scarce, and infection was often more deadly than bullets. Motor ambulances replaced horses, rushing wounded men to safety as shells burst in the distance. Trench foot rotted flesh, turning toes black, medics urged soldiers to dry socks and rub on whale oil. Shell shock left soldiers trembling, mute, and broken, long before the world understood PTSD. In the open field, medics applied quick bandages under fire, often saving lives with their bare hands. Thousands of nurses volunteered, knowing each day brought unimaginable suffering, and likely danger. Recovery was slow. The distant echo of artillery reminded survivors the war had not yet finished with them. The Mark I tank groaned across the battlefield, a metal beast built to crush barbed wire and fear alike. Inside the tanks, temperatures soared as fumes filled tight metal compartments, a suffocating hell. The Renault FT revolutionized tank warfare, introducing the rotating turret that shaped future battles. Artillery dominated the war. Most casualties came not from rifles, but from relentless bombardments. Machine guns turned open fields into killing grounds, stopping entire attacks in seconds. Advancing meant sprinting through mud, wire, and exploding shells. Few returned unscathed. Aircraft brought new eyes to the sky, guiding artillery and revealing hidden trench lines. Battlefields became moonscapes, endless craters scarred by months of destruction. Entire villages were reduced to rubble, their homes erased under the weight of artillery fire. Tons of shells were stockpiled behind the lines, fueling battles that could last for days. Despite the terror, soldiers shared what little they had, forming bonds forged in mud and fire. Letters carried hope both ways, reminding men that a world beyond the trenches still waited. Moments of rest were treasured pauses, where laughter briefly replaced the thunder of war. During the Christmas truce, enemies laid down arms, shared gifts, and played football on frozen ground. Smiles were rare but powerful, small rebellions against the crushing weight of conflict. Strategies changed daily as commanders searched for breakthroughs in a war of grinding attrition. Chaplains offered comfort among chaos, blessing soldiers before they marched into danger. Mail delivery was a moment of joy, each envelope a thread connecting soldiers to home. Courage wasn't just in battle, it lived in the moments soldiers carried each other through fire. Despite the conditions, men kept their uniforms clean when possible, a small dignity in a filthy war. As 1918 approached, new tactics and reinforcements pushed exhausted armies toward a final breakthrough. When the armistice was announced, relief swept the world, though hearts remained heavy with loss. Returning soldiers carried invisible scars, the trenches stayed with them long after the guns went silent. Entire cities stood shattered, silent monuments to the destruction that reshaped nations. Endless rows of graves marked the price of the war, millions of lives lost in mud, fire, and steel. For many, the war never ended. Veterans filled hospitals, suffering wounds that would never fully heal. Rusting tanks littered battlefields, broken reminders of technology's brutal role in the conflict. Old soldiers gathered years later, bonded by memories that only those who endured the trenches could understand. The Great War was more than a clash of empires. It was a human struggle, a battle for breath, for hope, for survival. In the trenches, tanks, and tears of World War I, we remember not just how the war was fought, but what it cost.